All right, so we're gonna try this one more time. Yeah, we've been working with technical errors and glitches, um, which is fine because we're trying to perfect something. So we're open to all of the errors we can experience because we're going to need them to help us understand what we're looking like and how we're operating come next week. So it's important. So I think, I guess the gift in this is that errors should be welcome. So we welcome them, right? Well, listen, it's tonight's message. I really can't wait to share it with you guys. It's all about dealing with being covered and not confused. And I thought this was a really good conversation. I got Coach Cheryl is going to come in and she's going to join me and we're going to banter about it. I've given her the scripture, Exodus chapter 4. For those of y'all that are wondering, Exodus chapter 4 is what we're reading from. And I can't wait, but I wanted to give everyone a chance to hang out with us. Come in, speak, do what you need to do. Holler at your family, holler at your friends. We won't be long. Just long enough to hang out and all right, so let's see. Let's try to run this in its totality and see what we come up with now. Um, if not, we'll just do this as a podcast episode because it looks like it's gonna be our best friend here in a minute. All right, so let's see. Let's see what we look like now. All right. So we look like we may be running with it. Let me see. I probably hear myself. So we look like we may be running with it. Okay. All right, coach, we up. Okay, cool. So it looks like it's up and running. I had to hear myself. I gotta make sure this thing work. Hopefully it get better. All right, y'all. Listen, we're just testing all of this technical stuff ahead of our village night. I want to make sure everything works. I want to make sure everything is good. And I thought, what better way to do this? I had a message that I was really contemplating going to TikTok and releasing, but I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's just try to explore this thing. And make sure it's working and it's doing what it's supposed to do. So, anyway, long story short, I think we got it. I want to say we got it, y'all. Hopefully, it's come together properly. Ain't no way of knowing yet, though. We won't know until we know. But listen, speaking of Village Night, just a friendly reminder to everybody that next Friday, August the 3rd, the 18th. Why do I want to say the 13th? August the 18th, we will have one of our second worship nights, and it's going to be back here in Houston, same place, Humble, Texas, rather, same place, Dominion Church International. Bishop Harden, amazing church family. We got a chance to get in there last night and do a sound check, and it went from a sound check to a worship. I mean, it got real. And I think that was a blessing all in itself, because just to have that moment and to really share that space and worship in that space was really, really good, really refreshing. And I definitely thank Bishop Harden and the team for helping us get in there and helping us sort through the technicalities, getting the sound right, making sure some things were coming together. Um, I think that for me was the overall blessing in itself, right? So listen, August the 18th, make your way to Houston, Humble, Texas. Doesn't matter where you are. You can come in off, what's that, 59, is that 59 North? That's 59 North, yeah. And take the 1960 exit. I think it's 1960. Listen, don't listen. Just put the map, put the address in 120 East Main Street, and then meet us there. And we would look forward to having you and worshiping with you. Here's one of the reasons why I'm excited about Breakthrough Night is because the understanding is clear that we are breaking everything, strongholds, setbacks. This was so good because early on when the Lord released this, the one thing he said was that the broken will break. And that blessed me because as it was being shared or released that the broken will break, it was in the understanding that you who are in that low place, you will break through to your higher ground. And that it will be better and you will not be bitter. And so I found that to be a blessing, just not just for me, but one worth sharing with others so that you understand that there is no room in this season that even if I'm dealing with grief, if I'm dealing with heartache, if I'm dealing with setback, if I'm dealing with lows in my life, there is still alone, but just quick enough to have it. Uh, just quick enough to have it. Covered, not confused. And this is taken from a conversation, or this is taken from a happening in the book of Exodus, where we see that God explains to Moses that I'm gonna put you in some positions that's gonna confuse Pharaoh because that's gonna mess Pharaoh head up because he's gonna think that you're confused and come after you. And the reason why this is important is because a lot of times we don't realize that people have come for you because God sent for them by where he placed you in your life. And so a lot of times people look at you financially, or they look at you based on, oh, your marriage is struggling, your relationship is going down. So we got a right to come at you based on what you're going through. Yeah, we got a right. We might as well come for you. We might as well check for your family. We might as well check for you because based on your situation, based on your circumstance, you are not in favor with God, or you know how we do with people. We look at where they are and we assume that's where they at. We look at what they're going through and we begin to just make assumptions that this is exactly what's happening in your life. So this conversation that God has with Moses is so important because sometimes people will think your back is against the wall and they don't even realize that you are simply in God's hands. That this is not a moment where my back, this is, you got to remember, they at the Red Sea. So your only option is you either going to deal with me or you about to drown in the Red Sea. So it appears. But what I love about this is that God yet again breaks the rules for his people. And listen, you got to know this, that God is getting ready to break the rules on your behalf. My wife can attest to it. I went to college with nobody's high school diploma, nobody's GED, but the rules were broken. The water parted for me to walk through that process or walk through that experience. I think they lost. I, I think I think you hit it in the wrong direction, fam. I don't think you really know where you're going. I think what happens is we expect people to understand us and understand what we've been through and understand that we've been in this struggle for a long time and understand that it's been hard on us and understand that you just lost your loved one and understand that your money has been funny for a while. But the reality is that you have people in your life who will not understand, and they can't understand because it's their assignment to not understand. And so it's a gift to where you're going to experience this where you're at. So I'm excited to have this conversation. I brought in some reinforcement with me because I didn't want to have this conversation by myself. I wanted to have somebody I can, tie into, and we go back and forth like we typically do. So I got Coach Cheryl with me. So, Coach, let me see if I can bring you on. Can you hear me? Let me see. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
I can. Surprisingly enough, I can hear you. Coach, I was just sitting there, and I'm sure you heard what I was saying about the understanding of Exodus. Do you have Exodus chapter 4 pulled up? I'm gonna let you read, and then we'll talk about it. But look, she's looking like no,
Yes,
no.
I got it.
Oh,
I got it.
okay. You got to have the Bibles up. Now,
You
but
know,
Coach,
always up.
there you go. What always? Let me clap for you, okay? You deserve the rowdy boys. There you go. Get the rowdy boy clap. So, Coach Cheryl, so listen, I was looking at this from the understanding of the book of Exodus. Here you have God expressing to Moses his plan to get them out of Egypt and move closer towards the promised land. But the thing with this is that this conversation they're having with God almost doesn't make sense. Kind of how it is today when we talk to God and He's telling us, He's giving us a layout or He's showing us the destination, but the way of getting there it's just really not adding up. It's not going the way you would think it would go if God was going to do it. So have you ever had that moment where people really just looked at your life and said, "Yeah, she's confused. She don't know what you know. She
Oh
clearly
yeah,
lost."
all the time, all the time. I mean, when God decides to use you, just like He's having this conversation with Moses, before He can use you to convince other people, He got to convince you. So
Right.
He's having a conversation with Moses, like, look, come on, you got to get it together.
Hmm.
I got you covered so that you'll be able to go and tell Pharaoh what I need you to tell him. But
Right.
until I can convince you and get you to believe what I'm telling you, because sometimes stuff is just what God does is just so outlandish. It just blows our mind
Coach Cheryl,
because
you can't say that. You can't say that about God.
oh,
you can't you can't say a move of God is outlandish.
oh, okay.
No. Mm-mm. No. No. You can't
Well,
say
he
that.
doesn't ever do what we think he's going to do,
That's
and
right. That's right.
he leaves us in the dust because he's so far ahead of us. So.
Right. Right. And that's so true. What I love what happens in chapter 4 at the top of it, where it says Moses answered and said, "What if they do not believe me or listen to me, and say that the Lord did not appear to me?" And I love this because I think we all have these moments in our life. I've had children out of wedlock. Who's gonna believe that God is times in my life? Who's gonna believe me? Have you ever had that or experienced that on your journey where you ask God like, "Come on, God, who gonna believe me?"
Yes, I have. And I'm pretty sure anybody that God has used has had this experience. It's like, that who's going to believe me?
Right.
Who's going to even listen to me? Because we have to see us how God sees us.
That's good.
And when you're looking at yourself as you know yourself and you know all the stuff that you've been through and all of that, then it's like, I can't tell nobody nothing. I mean, they ain't gonna listen to me.
Right.
But when God puts his hand on it and he puts his spin in it, then, now people will listen. And it will actually really kind of throw you for a loop.
So I gotta ask you this: when you encountered that moment on your journey, how did it feel? How did you more or less process it? And how did you break through it?
Well, uh, it was like with me when I wrote my book.
Oh
It was
wow!
like, oh, write this book, who's gonna want to read it, and who's gonna,
Right,
uh,
right, right.
there's gonna be there's gonna be a lot of people that's
I
gonna
can
like
relate to that one.
really. So, then God had to just really kind of, well, it's necessary because you went through all of that just so that you will have some backing or some credentials uh,
That's
that
good.
when they start reading it, then it was like, oh, I can relate to this, because I haven't been there.
Right, right.
So, yeah, you just have to get to the point where God shows you, well, you done been there, done that, you got the T-shirt, so you can speak on that. Yeah.
I love this because God asked Moses later on, "What is that in your hand?" So here's what I took away from this because I don't think we ever realized this, but Moses was equipped to to show the people who God was and didn't even realize it. This thing that showed him crippled also showed him favored. In the sense that God looks and asks him in the same chapter, "What is that in your hand?" Because I'm getting ready to use that which is in your hand. I'm not going to pull something drastic stuff that's going to happen later for y'all. I want to start with what's in your hand. And I think a lot of times, I think what was good about that when I read that passage or when I just, kind of seen God's response to Moses, I think what blessed me in that moment was the fact that he did ask Moses, "What's in your hand?" And he used what was in Moses' hand. Not he didn't have him go grab something, go find something. And the reason why that was good is because I think a lot of times, a lot of times for us, we fail to realize that you have already shown up equipped. You are already enough for me to get the glory. You're already enough that it listen that that what you have in your life, it may not be what Moses had in his hand, but it may be your life experience that God say, "Listen, I'm going to use your life experience to show the people. If you're worried about the people believing that I sent you, I'm going to use what you've already been through and let it minister." And
Mhm.
so I thought, just looking at that passage for me, I got excited because of the fact that it wasn't, because we make it seem sometimes that something drastic, God has to do something drastic for it to really be certified as a move of God, you know.
Well, yeah, and a lot of times, we're asking those questions, and God just doesn't even answer. As you can see here, as you can see here, He doesn't even miss that. He's about whether people gonna believe you or not. He's like, what you got in your hand? Let's
Right,
get to
right,
that.
right. He really, and
What's
that's
in your
funny.
hand?
That's funny you point that out. He did. He just bypassed the question. Like, I'm not even going to justify that with a response. I'm not even going to give you the satisfaction, Moses. I'm not even going to entertain your fear. Okay, what's that in your? You're so right. What's that in? Like, let's moving on.
Right
And
now, let
moving
me
on.
show you what to do with what's in your hand. That's all.
Right,
That's
right, right. And this is so true to God because He's such a purpose God that I'm not speaking to your problem. I'm gonna speak to your purpose. And so
mhm.
that's so funny you say that. See, that's why we have these conversations. So because see, like that's a revelation. I think that if we really look at the text, just in this segment, these three verses, there's enough to just really to pause and just say, "Okay, God, I trust you," because in there you see where God is, like you said, He's not responding to Moses' fear, He's responding to His purpose. He's not letting the problem, because what Moses is giving him is Moses' view of a problem, which we tend to do that. God, well, I've been forego. God shows us the promise, and so what we do, and I know what I do. We get invested in the problem. Okay, God, I see what you're saying. If I write this book, but let me think about the people writing this book could affect. Have
Right.
there been a time on your journey where your problem almost or did block your promise or delay your promise? Because I don't believe the promise can be blocked. I think it can be delayed. But have there been a moment, or better yet, has there been a moment where you allowed the problem to stand in front of your promise?
Well, yeah, because it delayed me writing that book because
Oh,
I
that's good.
knew I kind of figured on how some people would react to the book. And so I was doing just like Moses was doing. It's like, well, what if they're gonna get offended or something? I'm trying not to
Right.
offend anybody,
Right.
but the story has to be out.
It has to be
But or
told.
yeah, it has to be told, and it's not about them. So
That
they just have to get to the.
I'm errors that we're experiencing. But just and we're only on the third verse. We still got to get to the rest of this thing. we still got
How
we
many
still got
verses were we doing?
I, I mean, we're going down I mean, verse number. We were going to verse number 5. Maybe go down to
Oh,
14. We may go down to 14 at least. I'm not
okay.
sure, but we have to get through it. I guess let's fix these technical errors, and then we'll try this later. Because this conversation it feels like it's a really necessary conversation, and it's a really good one, and I really want to have it infused. You're covered. Yes, you are in a place in your life that makes absolutely no sense to you, to the people around you, because this wasn't just confusing to. This was confusing. Here's the funny thing. It was confusing to Moses before it was confusing to anybody else.
Right.
It was fearful for Moses before it was fearful for anyone else. And so a lot of times, I'm learning that you feel it first, but it doesn't mean you don't carry it out. Doesn't mean you don't go forward in it. So I want us to work on these technical errors, and then I want us to try this conversation again later. So you cool to come back on and let's do this. And
Oh, sure. Oh, sure.
I know without warning, I'll just tell you to log on, and then we'll go from there. We'll go from there, Coach. Is that cool with you?
Okay. That's fine. That's fine.
Perfect.
So are we continuing today or no?
I don't know. I want to do this today. I want to finish this conversation today. So let's see
Okay,
if we can get
so
that.
so so you have to kind of look at the fact of where Moses was. Okay, so Moses had been in Egypt. He had been around
Right.
Pharaoh, and he committed a crime, and he ran
A
off
criminal.
because of his guilt. And so he's been 40 years on the backside of the desert. He's been tending
Now hold
sheep.
on, Coach Cheryl. You're telling me a criminal played a role.
He
Okay, we'll
can
talk about that.
use
We'll talk about that
whoever
when we
he wants to use.
we'll talk about that when we log back in. Cripple and criminal. Okay, okay. So he had he had a lot of okay. All right, Coach. We'll talk about it when we get back on, because I think that's a valid point. Because people don't believe that you could be criminal and used by God. I mean, but okay.
So that's why he had all these questions. You're like,
Yeah,
who am I? I've been
right,
back here
right.
tending sheep. But he didn't realize him tending the sheep was getting him ready to take these people.
I'm at this point. I'm going to find me some
Okay, you
sheep.
want me to stop? I'm gonna
I,
stop.
See, the technology just don't let us won't let us be great. Okay, we'll try this again in a minute. We're having some broadcasting connection errors, so saying the reception keep failing. So we'll work our way back into this, and so give us a second, Coach, and then we'll come back in. Okay.
All right.
All right. All right, you guys. So we are going to find a way to work ourselves back into this conversation, because I mean, listen, what Coach Cheryl just shared, and what we're talking about is really good. But we run into some technical glitches, and we're gonna sort through them. And then if you guys can be patient and hang out with us for a minute, we'll come back, and then we'll see. We'll see what the end gonna be. Hopefully, it's something good. Which we'll see. I think in all things we trust God. It'll work out. All right. See y'all back here.